Thank you. I believe I'm on right now. My name is Mark Arlotta, and I'm the Vice President at Jonathan Green. I want to thank everybody for joining me today as we discuss our lawn care plan. We are quite a bit different than competitors in the industry, and I'm thrilled to show it to all of you today. Maggie, I am going to go to my PowerPoint presentation right now, and I just want to make sure that everybody could see this first slide as I begin. Can you confirm that? I'm assuming everybody can see this. Okay, I'm going to start because I haven't heard anything otherwise. We're going to talk today about the Jonathan Green difference. And that difference, of course, is available at Alsip's Nursery. Alsip's is one of our strongest supporters, and you'll see why in just a moment. Whether you like it or not, this is the fertilizer and grass seed category today. Unfortunately, all of these companies are racing to the bottom to be the cheapest price on grass seed and fertilizer. And usually when you sell a bargain basement price on products, you don't get the greatest quality. Jonathan Green deems ourselves completely different than our competitors. We have a totally different philosophy, which you're going to learn about today. And because of it, we view ourselves as the 93 octane at the grass seed and fertilizer pump, interested in consumers who are really, really interested in having a great looking lawn. And here is our philosophy. If you have poor seed or start out with poor seed on your lawn and you have poor soil, and when we talk about poor soil at Jonathan Green, we're not talking about taking bags of topsoil and dumping them throughout your lawn. We're talking about working with the existing subsoil that you have and making it better to provide a proper foundation for your seed and for your lawn. When you have poor seed and poor soil, you'll have a poor lawn. And conversely, if you start out with genetically superior grass seed at the top and augment the existing soil that you will have a great looking lawn. And that is Jonathan Green's mantra. Improve your seed, improve your soil, improve your lawn. And sadly, our competitors in this industry don't do this. They just basically focus on lawn fertilizing, pest controls, and all the rest of it. And they really, really don't focus on starting out with great seed and augmenting the soil so you don't have all of those, we'll say, symptoms to bad lawns. You need to deal with the problem. And the problem, of course, is bad seed and bad soil. Discover the Jonathan Green difference on your lawn today, and you're going to learn about that in just a moment. So let's start quickly with a Lawns 101 class, beginning first with grass seed. When it comes to grass seed, the story at Jonathan Green begins and ends with Black Beauty. Black Beauty is a genetically superior grass. It's grown by leading sod growers across the United States. And what makes it different than most of the turf grasses on the market today is it has a 4-foot deep root system, not 6 to 9 inches like many other turf grass varieties. It also has, when you grow it, you'll see it, a waxy coating on the leaf. So that locks in moisture. It's just like the skin of an apple. So between locking in moisture and the plant not evaporating a lot of water when it gets hot and the 4-foot deep root system that holds the water, you have an incredibly drought and disease resistant plant. It's darker green than some of the finest Kentucky bluegrasses, some of which we grow here at Jonathan Green. And as I said before, it's grown by leading sod growers across the United States. Now, if you've ever watched the program This Old House on PBS, they use Black Beauty sod and Black Beauty seed on all their seeding projects. And I'm going to show a quick clip from one of the more recent episodes.
Well, Well, frost or no frost, it's always a great day when the sod shows up here towards the end of the project. And Roger, nothing seems to stop you from laying down a beautiful new lawn this time of year.
No, look, we got a great day to get this turned all green.
Perfect.
You remember Pat Hogan, our sod supplier?
I do, Pat. Good to see you.
Good seeing you, Kevin.
So what did you bring us today?
Well, for 30 years, we brought you bluegrass. This time we've got something a little different. It's our Black Beauty blend that's 30 to 50% less fertilizer and water needed.
Really?
Yeah, this is a tall fescue, Kevin. With a bluegrass, we were fertilizing 4 times a year, the 4-step method that everyone knows. And the bluegrass needed all that fertilizer, the nitrogen especially, to stay green. Well, the tall fescue only needs half of it. So we don't have nitrogen overload, nitrogen getting in the water supply.
Yeah, we don't like nitrogen running off into the water at all.
Not at all.
All right, so how is it possible that we use half as much fertilizer and nearly half as much water? What did you guys do?
Well, the plant researchers have found several blends. One was out towards the Sahara, another was in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and they crossbred this, and that's what they've come up with. You can't tell by looking at it, but this plant has a waxy coating on it, just like an apple, and that seals it from evapotranspiration, meaning none of the moisture is getting sucked out of the leaves. Also, the root system on this will go down almost 4 feet, where the bluegrass is only 6 to 9 inches deep and dries out really quickly.
That is incredible. So you literally went to the ends of the earth to come up with the perfect grass.
Absolutely.
Less fertilizer and less water sounds great. It looks beautiful as well, so I say we get it down.
Let's plant it.
And the Alsip Nursery stores have a complete line of Black Beauty grass seeds for you to buy. Now let's talk about fertilizer and weed control. We just talked about grass seed when it comes to lawn care, and I'll give you a quick skinny on fertilizer and weed control. Whatever fertilizer you buy, whether it's a lawn fertilizer in a large bag or even a box of plant food like Miracle-Gro, you're going to find these 3 numbers on the bag. These 3 numbers are known as the NP and K ratio. It stands for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and they are all macronutrients, meaning they are the most essential nutrients for proper plant growth. And you don't need to remember nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Instead, an easy way to remember the NP and K ratio is up, down, and all around. Keep that in your mind. Let's talk about nitrogen, the up element. When it comes to turfgrass fertilizer, nitrogen is probably the most important element because it's what feeds the lawn and greens the leaves. That's why we call it the up element, right? It's the color that you see up above the ground. Nitrogen is found in turf fertilizers, and they feed the amount of nitrogen in the fertilizer feeds the lawn for 2 months. Hence the reason why most people have purchased 4-step programs in the past, because the nitrogen feeds for 2 months, and after 2 months, that nitrogen has been completely used up by the plant, and it's time to use the next step. Then, of course, after step 2, 2 months later, you have to put step 3 down because the nitrogen has completely been used by the plant. So again, traditional 4-step programs are built around the 2-month feeding supply of nitrogen. So that's the up part of the up, down, all around. Phosphorus is the down element. Now, when we're talking about down with plants, we're obviously talking about roots, and that's exactly what phosphorus aids in. It aids in the root development of grass seed, which doesn't have a root yet. It needs to imbibe phosphorus to build one, and also freshly cut sod, which has been greatly stressed by being cut right at the root zone, and it needs phosphorus to regenerate its root system. You're only going to find phosphorus heavy in starter fertilizers, fertilizers that are especially used when you plant and when you sod. The vast majority of states have banned phosphorus in established turfgrass fertilizer. So if you already have a lawn outside, it's already up and growing, you don't need phosphorus. There's enough of it in the soil to provide for the established plant that's on your lawn. The problem is much of the phosphorus, because the soils are afoul, chemically and biologically, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, a lot of that phosphorus leaches into groundwater because it's not used by the plant. And that's the reason why the states have banned phosphates. So as I stated, phosphorus has been taken out of most established turfgrass fertilizers because the soils are not chemically and biologically active and absorbing that phosphorus that's already in it. Potassium is the last element. That's the all-around vitamin pill for the plant. It's found at high levels in fall fertilizers. Why? Because the plant is going to go dormant in the wintertime, and you want to protect it from diseases that particularly happen during cold and harsh winters. Potassium also helps build strong cell walls, and it allows the plant to retain moisture when it gets hot. So let's go over to weed control now. We've talked about the basics of lawn fertilizer, NPK, up, down, all around. Let's talk about weed control. That's a big, big problem in homeowner lawns. And did you know that there are two types of weeds on your lawn, grassy weeds and broadleaf weeds, and the way they're controlled are completely different. And most consumers, unfortunately, don't know this. Let's take a look at grassy weeds first. Grassy weeds are exactly what the name describes. Ugly, light green grasses that don't really have a visible flower. Crabgrass is probably the most well-known grassy weed. And all of your grassy weeds are annual in nature, meaning that they're going to grow very actively in the summertime. They're going to spit out seeds on your lawn. They're going to die when the first frost comes, but all of those seeds that they ejected during the summertime are now going to germinate in the spring and cause more trouble on your lawn this year. Therefore, traditionally in our industry, we've used pre-emergent treatments that we put down in the early spring, and they prevent crabgrass seeds that may be in your lawn by the thousands from germinating. Okay, so they're known as pre-emergents. Step 1, Turf Builder with Halts from Scott's, Green Up with Crabgrass Preventer from Jonathan Green are all pre-emergent herbicides to treat grassy weeds. Again, they're applied usually in the early spring because if you apply them later on when the weather gets warmer, that crabgrass seed could germinate. And once it germinates, most crabgrass preventers won't work. You'll have to wait till it grows and spray it out later in the summertime. Now, broadleaf weeds are different than grassy weeds. First, just take a look at them. They have a visible flower, the yellow dandelion, the white clover. And they also have a long taproot, which you have to kill. Otherwise, the plant will just grow back. Broadleaf weeds, like dandelions, are perennial in nature. So where grassy weeds are annual, broadleaf weeds are perennial. And if you don't control them, they will come back right away. We usually used post-emergent herbicides, meaning that the weed has to be actively growing to kill it. Whereas grassy weeds you want to prevent, really, broadleaf weeds you want to kill after the fact. I love it when consumers come into stores in March when it's very cold outside and they go buy a weed and feed. Weed and feeds are broadleaf weed killers. And there's no active weeds really growing on their lawn. And if there are, there might be 1 or 2 dandelions growing. And I always say, hey, wait till the end of May. Wait till when the weather gets warmer and those weeds, those dandelions, those clovers, those chickweeds are in full bloom. That's when you want to apply your weed and feed. And typically, weed and feeds are the second step. As I said, they're applied later in the spring or early in the summertime. Sometimes people put them down in the fall as well. Whenever you're using a weed and feed or any kind of granular broadleaf weed control, it's extremely important to water the lawn beforehand so the particle sticks to the leaf and so the herbicide sticks to the leaf and absorbs to kill the root, and that there's no rain or no sprinkler water for 48 hours afterward. If you have rain after you put down your weed and feed, and it happens right away, it'll wash the herbicide off the leaf and render the weed and feed ineffective. So now let's talk about soil care. We just talked about lawn care and grass seed and fertilizer and weed control. But here is the area where Jonathan Green really niches in. This is the area where Jonathan Green is completely different. We talk about the soil and augmenting the soil to have the perfect turf grass that you've always desired. And when we talk about soil care, we're mainly talking about two facets, pH and compaction. Let's first talk about pH. pH stands for potential hydrogen, and it's measured on a pH scale. The scale ranges from 0 on the left to 14 all the way on the right. pH that's less than 7, 7 is smack dab in the middle. pH that's less than 7 is acidic. pH that's greater than 7 is alkaline or basic. Now, you don't have to worry about alkaline soils so much. The area that the Alsip stores are in Illinois and Indiana, usually have very acidic soil. So you're more concerned about pH that's below 7. 7, of course, is neutral. It's pure water on the pH scale. Some of you may remember this scale from high school or college when you did litmus paper and pH tests. Lawns thrive in what we call the sweet spot, that neutral range. Slightly acidic, about 6.2, to slightly alkaline, 7.2 on the pH scale. And you'll notice from this graphic in this chart that once you're in that ideal range, all of those nutrients, including the phosphorus that I told you that has been banned by most states, all of those nutrients release to the plant. As a matter of fact, 20 to 70% of your lawn fertilizer is wasted when soil pH is too low. And this study, this statement, does not come from Jonathan Green. It comes from Cornell University, right after that 6.2 range. And they become far less available to the plant and often get washed away into groundwater. Now, we have a training academy, and all of you who are watching this training class that I'm doing today, well, feel privileged because this academy is going to be unveiled next week to our retailers and consumers nationwide. So you're really the first people to see this. It's a 2.5-minute segment on acidic soils, and I'm going to play it for you right now.
Why should you care about acidic soil? Well, let's demonstrate with some visuals. This lawn has a healthy, neutral pH, but this lawn has acidic soil. Yikes! Lawns grow best in soil pH that's between 6.2 and 7.0. Soil becomes acidic when too many hydrogen ions throw off the pH balance. Here are 4 reasons why it could happen to you. First, excessive rainfall. Heavy rains flush alkaline elements out of the soil, leaving room for acidic elements to take their place. Second, organic matter. Decaying leaves, stems, and manures break down into natural acids that lower soil pH. Third, fertilizers. Traditional fertilizers used by homeowners and farmers are high in nitrogen and break down into acidic compounds. Fourth, acid rain. This occurs when carbon dioxide in the atmosphere mixes with normal rainwater, and you guessed it, one-way ticket to acid town. When soils become too acidic, grass struggles and weeds thrive. Toxic materials build up, and key nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium can't dissolve in the soil water, so then the roots can't drink them up. Bye-bye nutrients. Hello, lawn troubles. Let's look at nitrogen. When soil pH drops, the good bacteria in soil stops functioning, and it can't munch on that sweet, sweet nitrogen. Same with phosphorus. In acidic soil, phosphorus bonds with iron and aluminum, becoming insoluble. In very acidic soil, aluminum can become toxic to plants. So what can you do to stop it? Jonathan Green has 2 specific products for the job. Magic Cow for lawns and acidic soils contains 35% fast-acting calcium carbonate in a water-soluble form that rapidly raises and balances soil pH. Magical Plus for lawns in acidic and hard soils quickly raises soil pH. Plus, it loosens hard soil to increase root penetration, biological activity, and nutrient absorption. Both Magical and Magical Plus are super concentrated. In fact, one 5,000 square foot bag is equal to 5 bags of regular lime, and a 15,000 square foot bag is equal to 15 bags of regular lime. You'll spend less time pushing the spreader for half the price. Kick acid to the curb with Jonathan Green.
Now, that is going to be one of 8 segments to lawn care that we're going to be unveiling, should be at the end of next week on our website. You'll see grass seed, you'll see fertilizer, you'll see weed control, etc. But it's a perfect segue to a product. I talked to you about Black Beauty on grass seed, the perfect soil improver that I'm going to talk about in just a moment, called Magical Plus. But another problem, in addition to pH, that you have in soil is compaction. If your soil is hard and compacted, nutrients tend to run off. Roots grow shallow, grass grows pale green and thin. And this is a big problem in the industry as well. And it leads to nutrient runoff because nutrients can't penetrate that root zone, and therefore the grass never maximizes them. Now, here is another video from that Jonathan Green Training Academy on the importance of soil compaction and soil health.
What's the golden rule of lawn care? It's what's underneath that counts. Healthy soil should be full of microbial life. Soil needs air, water, nutrients, earthworms, and organic matter to support healthy grass. Many homeowners spend a fortune on weed controls and fertilizers, but their lawns are still weedy and dull because they're treating the symptoms and not the problem, ignoring the soil underneath. One common cause of unhealthy soil is compaction. This is caused by hard clays found in the soil. Compaction is made worse by heavy traffic on the lawn. Maybe your dog and kids play in the same part of the yard every day. Or you park vehicles on the front lawn. Or you mow your lawn using the same pattern every week. All of these scenarios make soil dense over time. Want to test yours? Just stick a screwdriver in the soil. If you can't easily push it down to the handle, it's compacted. In compacted soil, the roots have a hard time breaking through, and the microbial life diminishes. Microbes play a vital part in healthy soil, decomposing organic matter like leaves, stems, and manures into humus, creating nutrients that the roots can absorb. When roots are shallow and microbes are starved, then so is the grass. How do you fix compacted soil? Some homeowners try renting expensive core aerating machines. But within months, these holes fill back in and the soil recompacts. To fight compaction for good, you need to change the biology of the soil. You need Jonathan Green. Love Your Soil is fortified with natural humus-rich foods to keep the microbes active and gypsum-rich additives to keep the soil loose and porous. Magical Plus does all that to fight compaction, plus tackling unbalanced pH. So, if your lawn is lacking, remember the golden rule and improve your soil.
Another great video, and of course it leads us to the product that you've been hearing about, Magical Plus, a relatively new product that we came out with in 2019. Stunning success, and we've actually unveiled it nationally to hardware stores and garden centers across the country. Magical Plus, like no other really product in the industry, adjusts soil pH rapidly while at the same time loosens hard soil quickly with a proprietary highly concentrated gypsum. It also feeds the soil microbes that help break down all those fertilizer nutrients so they release to the plant in full. It can be used at any time of the year, up to 3 times a year if you have very acidic soil. And it's compatible with any lawn food or grass seed. So you don't have to use a Jonathan Green product if you're using a Scott's fertilizer or another person's 4-step program. Magical Plus is completely compatible with those products. It's available in a 5,000 square foot lawn, a 5,000 square foot size for a 5,000 square foot lawn. And if you have a larger lawn, like a 15,000 square foot or higher, we have a larger bag of Magical Plus as well. Now, we have a hardware store in the Northeast that sells a lot of Magical Plus to his customers. And I asked him, well, how do you do it? And he said, well, it's a very, very easy scenario that I describe, and a very real one as well. He says that Magical Plus is the primer for the paint. And I thought that was like up, down, and all around, a very good way for homeowners to understand the importance of using a soil amendment, soil improver with their traditional lawn fertilizers. So let's take a quick look at our product versus our competition. Of course, our major competition in the marketplace is Scotts Miracle-Gro. They have fine fertilizers, but they are different than Jonathan Green. So you're noticing that our grass seed is different. You're noticing that we have soil foods that the rest of the industry really doesn't have to deal with what we call the foundation of healthy turf. But the lawn foods are different as well. Scotts uses a product called pendimethalin. It's in their step 1 in their turf builder with Halts. It's a very good product. It's a pre-emergent. And Jonathan Green, however, has a pre-emergent called Dimension. It's a pre-emergent just like the Scotts product, but it's also a post-emergent. So if you're a little bit late to the dance, maybe the weather warms up and you forgot to put your pre-emergent down, the Jonathan Green crabgrass preventer will actually kill crabgrass after it grows up to the 3rd leaf stage. Crabgrass is a 7-leaf plant, so you're almost controlling crabgrass up to half its leaf life cycle. Gives you an extra 4 weeks to apply the product. Also, step 1 in turf builder with Halts has a yellow stain to it because pendimethalin, the active ingredient, has a yellow color, and it will stain your walkway and patio and driveway, whereas Dimension is clear-coated. It doesn't stain property at all. In addition to that, our competitors feed for 2 months. We feed 33% longer with a slower release nitrogen, so we feed the lawn. Late spring and the dandelions are popping and you're putting down your weed and feeds. These Scotts weed controls, the step 2 and the turf builder weed and feed, kill about 67 broadleaf weeds. Jonathan Green weed and feed kills over 250, about 3.5 times more. In addition, the Scotts product feeds for 2 months, and Jonathan Green, just like our crabgrass preventer, feeds for 3 months. And as I stated earlier, whenever you're using a granular broadleaf weed killer, remember to apply it to a wet lawn. Make sure there's no rain or sprinklers on it 48 hours after application. It's really the only product when it comes to lawn fertilizer that you have to be a weatherman with. So let's take a look at the autumn, the fall. Well, Scotts uses a high nitrogen fall fertilizer formula, a 32-0-10, up, down, all around. Whereas we use a high potash fall fertilizer. It's a 10-0-20. What's the difference? Well, when you look at university studies, when you feed with too much nitrogen in the fall, you tend to get diseases like snow mold and red thread in the early spring. The reason why that happens is because snow mold and red thread are 2 diseases that occur for one reason only, and it's because they're nitrogen deficient. When you feed with too much nitrogen in the fall, you're encouraging the plant, instead of storing its nitrogen reserves, you're encouraging the plant to feed off the nitrogen that you just gave it. And your lawn grows very, very green into the wintertime. And really, it shouldn't do that. It should go dormant. It should reserve its nitrogen. So when the spring comes, there's nitrogen reserves there ready to release to the grass, and snow mold and red thread does not occur. The only reason why you get the latter 2 diseases is because you fed with too much nitrogen in the fall. Now, we do have a soil improver, as I said, called Magical Plus, and the Scotts Miracle-Gro Company recently came out with a soil improver of their own, and it's called Foundation. The problem with Foundation, if you ever see it, is it doesn't do anything to adjust soil pH. There's no calcium carbonate in the product at all. What it contains is attapulgite clay. And attapulgite clay is a soil moistener not a soil loosener. So it doesn't loosen hard soil long term. Whereas you saw before, Magical Plus has a dihydrate gypsum at a very high concentrate to really open up the soil and make it more porous. Also, foundation's only available in a 5M size. And if you have a larger lawn, like a 15M size, you'd have to spend quite a bit of money on what we feel is an inferior product. So what's new for all of you in 2021 from Jonathan Green? This is a really interesting item. It's called Black Beauty with Solar Green Superheat Tolerant Texas Bluegrass. Well, we're always thinking outside the box at Jonathan Green. That's what we do here. You already know that Black Beauty is a very heat and drought tolerant grass seed because of its deep roots and its waxy coating on the leaf. Well, we're going to mix it this year in one new product called Black Beauty with Solar Green. And that new product that we're mixing it with is going to be called Solar Green Texas Bluegrass. Now, you may have heard of Kentucky bluegrass. It's grown across the country. It's actually native to Europe. But Texas bluegrass is native to the United States. It's native to Texas. And the difference between it and Kentucky bluegrass is it doesn't need the amount of water that Kentucky bluegrass needs. It doesn't need the amount of fertilizer that Kentucky bluegrass needs. And it doesn't need the amount of disease controls and pesticides that Kentucky bluegrass needs. So it requires a lot less maintenance, and you get the exact type of look that you have with Kentucky. They look identical. And we're growing it with Black Beauty. It can withstand temperatures, Texas bluegrass can, of up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So now when you combine it with Black Beauty, we think we will have the best heat and drought tolerant mixture on the market by far. And when you look at the bag, just so you're not duped, yes, Texas bluegrass can be grown not only in Texas, but also in all of those states in green. And clearly, Illinois and Indiana are two of those states. And another neat product that we've got this year for people that have stubborn bare spots on their lawn is Black Beauty Seed Roll. Now, Black Beauty Seed Roll is impregnated with our best sun and shade mix, Black Beauty Ultra, along with starter fertilizer. So if you have a real hilly area and sometimes your seed tends to erode when it rains, or you just have an irregular bare spot that you're having some trouble with, all you need to do is rake the area, apply the seed roll. It's biodegradable, and the grass seed will germinate in about 10 to 14 days. So that's basically everything that's going on with Jonathan Green. And of course, our philosophy versus the rest of the industry, we really believe in a bottom-up approach to lawn care. Start with great seed. Start by amending your soil. And we believe, and we've proven it on sod farms, that all of those problems like moss and weeds and disease, which are really symptomatic to poor soil and poor grass seed varieties, will work themselves out. So I guess, Maggie, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm back, and I have a couple of questions here. And I've reserved about 25 minutes or so to answer questions. The first question is, when is a good time to overseed an existing lawn? And when can I use a pre-emergence so I don't kill off the new seedlings? Well, a great time to seed, of course, is in the early spring or in the fall. You have to kind of make a conscious decision. Do you want to seed now, or would you prefer to seed later? If you want to seed later, meaning in the fall, you could apply any pre-emergent on your lawn that you'd like. If you, however, you want to seed now, let's say your lawn is very, very thin and you really want to thicken it up, I suggest that you start seeding in early to mid-April. Rake up your lawn real well so you get good seed to soil contact. Use a starter fertilizer and Magical Plus. And the neat thing about pre-emergent care with our product, if you think about this, as I told you, our dimension actually works after crabgrass germinates. So you could actually seed in early April, water it, starter fertilize it, use Magical Plus, and by the time mid-May to late May happens, that grass seed will have germinated. You would have mowed it probably once or twice, and then you could apply the crabgrass preventer from Jonathan Green because it is a post-emergent. So it's a great question. There's also some starter fertilizers out there that prevent crabgrass. They don't prevent crabgrass very long, however. They just hold down crabgrass enough to get the grass seed up and started while crowding out any crabgrass that might germinate. So I hope I answered that question. How long does Magical Plus take to loosen the soil? If you have very, very compacted soil, you're probably going to need 2, perhaps 3 applications. But if it's moderately compacted, you'll see results right away. Any advice about wild violets in the lawn? Best thing to do, if they're throughout your lawn, you could use a weed and feed. Most weed and feeds will knock wild violets out. You could also attack them with spot sprayers. A Weed Be Gone, a Bonide Weed Beater Ultra. They're 2 products that are commonly used on violets and other broadleafs. What can I do with a thin lawn that is mixed with dry grass? So I'm assuming it's just the lawn is very thin, and when you say dry grass, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, but I'm assuming it's just very, very thin lawn. Use Magical Plus to adjust your pH. It's usually why your grass gets kind of thin and shallow rooted, and overseed it with Black Beauty using a starter fertilizer. Overseeding is a great thing to do. Thickens up even the dullest looking grasses. Let me scroll up here and read a few more. Best time to overseed your lawn. As I said, if you agronomically, the best time to overseed a lawn is in the fall because the weather is cool. The water is abundant. Usually get a lot of rainfall in the fall. The problem with the fall is while agronomically it's correct, practically for many, many homeowners, it is not. And the reason why is because homeowners do have trees, and trees shed leaves. And when you're shedding down leaves, you're raking them up, you're blowing them, you're chipping them, etc., etc., etc. And when you do all of that activity, you're also going to gobble up a lot of the seed that you just sowed on your lawn. So from a practical standpoint, if you have a lot of trees, the fall is not really a great time. But agronomically speaking, and especially if you don't have a lot of trees on your property, the fall is usually the best time to overseed. Do you recommend seeding every year? If so, what is the mix that you recommend? Well, I don't recommend overseeding every year if your lawn is thick and full and vibrant. If, however, it's thin, overseeding is the right thing to do. Remember, your best ally against any weed, whether it's a grassy weed or a broadleaf weed, is a thick, healthy turf grass. Because when you have a thick, healthy turf, you crowd out any weed seeds that are in your lawn. They have no room to grow. And this is the reason why we believe our philosophy is the best out there, because we're using top flight grass seed. We're augmenting the subsoil. We're using great fertilizers, keeping that lawn thick and healthy. And if you do get any weeds, because you've addressed your soil and you've kept your turf grass nice and vibrant, then you can localize your herbicides by spraying them accordingly and not blanketly putting pesticides down every year on your lawn. Is sod preferred over grass seed? Sod's a lot more expensive than grass seed. Sod is an instant lawn where grass seed will take several weeks usually to germinate. But it depends. Most of the sods that are sold today are Kentucky bluegrass sods, unless you buy Black Beauty sod from a Black Beauty authorized sod grower, and there are several in your marketplace. But most sods are Kentucky bluegrass sods. Kentucky bluegrass likes sunlight, So if you do have some trees on your lawn, many times you'll see kind of sod thin out and need to be overseeded. But there are some great sods out there. I would say it's all dependent on your budget, and it's dependent on the climatic conditions of your lawn. A lot of trees, a lot of shade, no. If you're willing to spend more money, get yourself a really good sod grower who grows very good varieties, and you could sod your lawn accordingly. But it will cost you some bucks. How do I get rid of zoysia grass? And how can I keep it from killing my good grass? It gets worse every year. Well, zoysia is a warm season transitional zone grass that is very aggressive. It grows in the northern climates too, but it usually stays like a hayish white during the early spring. And in the summertime, that's when it greens up and gets very aggressive. The only way you could really kill zoysia is to use a non-selective herbicide. Many people are shying away from Roundup because of the bad press that it's received. But there are other non-selective weed killers. Spectracide has some. There's some even organic products from Pulverize and other brands that will usually do a number on all vegetative growth, including zoysia. You could spray out the zoysia, kill it with those kind of herbicides, and usually within about a week, start to seed your lawn so it doesn't grow back. When is it too early to reseed, I guess is the question. It's a bit cold right now. If you lay seed down on your soil, nothing's going to happen to it. It's not going to die. It's just going to wait for the proper soil temperatures to germinate. And what are those soil temperatures? Soil temperatures need to be 55 degrees and above regularly for grass seed to start growing. So it's probably a bit too cool right now for you to really plant and water your grass seed. But if you did it, or if you applied it tomorrow, let's say, nothing's going to happen to it. It's just going to take a little while for it to germinate. How do you handle winter salt damage to your lawn? Well, obviously, salt could dehydrate the lawn very quickly. What you'll want to do, and usually happens around walkways and driveway edges, best thing to do is wait till it gets a little bit warmer, rake it out and overseed it and keep it watered well. Many of the patching products, I mentioned to you, Seed Roll, is perfect for areas right along that driveway, right along that walkway, where some of the salt that you applied usually, I'll say, compiles the most on your turf grass. I've read that it is good to seed your lawn annually with a blend/mix of tall fescue, Kentucky bluegrass, etc. Do you recommend this? What blend do you like? Well, it's interesting that you say that. Our Black Beauty is a tall fescue. It's also mixed with some Kentucky bluegrass, and in some cases even ryegrass. Mixtures happen for a lot of different reasons. In our mixes, basically, we put a ryegrass in, so the ryegrass germinates the fastest of any of the grasses. So it'll basically create a weed-free zone, so to speak, and a good cover crop for the tall fescue and the Kentucky bluegrass, which are more aggressive once they start germinating, to overtake the rye and thus overtake the lawn. Kentucky bluegrass, most bluegrasses require a lot of maintenance. Again, I would strongly suggest that you try our Black Beauty with Solar Green if you're looking for a great mixture for heat, drought tolerance, and low maintenance later on in the year. We have a broadleaf weed that is not crabgrass. How do we kill it? What do we use? Okay, crabgrass, of course, is not a broadleaf weed. It's a grassy weed. Broadleaf weeds are usually identified by their pronounced flower and their tap roots, as I said earlier. Best thing to do is to use a weed and feed. wet the lawn beforehand and apply it, but don't do it right now. I would wait till later on in the spring when the weather gets warmer, and you'll likely have more of those kind of weeds later on. And of course, you'll maximize their kill when you apply your herbicide at that time. If you've only got a few of those weeds, you could spot spray them. If you have one that's growing right now in this cold weather, which is probably unlikely, but if you do have one, Bonide has a product called Weed Beater Ultra. It has a chemical called carfentrazone in it, which will kill broadleaf weeds even when it's 55 degrees. So it's an item that I believe Alsip sells, and you may want to look to buy if it's bothering you that much. When is a good time to overseed an existing lawn? I think I answered that question. Would you recommend adding Magical into landscaping beds? Well, technically it's not listed for landscape beds. It's only listed for lawns. I'm not quite sure, though, you would want to use Magical or any kind of lime in your landscaping beds. Most of your landscaping beds have flowers and that usually are acid loving. They actually like acid. And by adding Magical, which is an alkaline, you might take away a little bit from the growth of those plants. Of course, many of you probably heard of Miracid, which has been used in flower beds and azaleas and evergreens for years and years and years because of its acidifying nature. Some people will use Magical in vegetable beds like tomatoes. It's always good to use a lime-based product in a garden bed where you're growing tomatoes. Many of you who do, you may notice that your tomatoes sometimes get those black ends on the bottom of the tomato. Many people misinterpret those black colors as a disease on the tomato plant when really it's not. It's blossom end rot, and blossom end rot is a calcium deficiency in the plant. It's not a disease, and therefore it gets remedied very quickly with lime because lime is calcium carbonate. I have been applying Milorganite after the pre-emergent the last couple of years. Is this area anywhere close to Magical, and can I add both? Milorganite is a very good organic fertilizer. Know the people well. I'm assuming if you're applying it after a pre-emergent, that's telling me that you're using a straight pre-emergent with no fertilizer. Because remember, Milorganite's a fertilizer. So if you're feeding with, let's say, our step one or a competitor step one, you have fertilizer already in it, and now you're adding Milorganite fertilizer on top of that. That may not be a good thing. If you're using a straight pre-emergent with no fertilizer in it, and then you augment it with Milorganite lawn food, that's perfect. And you can certainly use Magical on the same day with any of those products. I think I've answered the rest of these questions that I see. How do you build up your soil for a better lawn? We have many uneven areas. Well, usually when you have peaks and valleys in the lawn, the best thing to do is to add topsoil to it. You can do it with bags if it's not too cumbersome. If you have a lot of peaks and valleys, you may want to get topsoil dumped in bulk on your lawn. Just remember, however, many of the topsoils that are in packages and that are dumped in bulk on homeowner lawns are very acidic, and you'll likely need to use a pH adjuster like Magical on it. I think I've answered, Maggie, all of the questions. If there's any more. Okay. Well, doesn't appear that there's any more questions. Again, I want to thank you very, very much for joining me today and learning about the Jonathan Green philosophy of lawn care. You can always visit our website at www.jonathangreen.com for more information on lawn and soil care, on grass seed. Look out for that training academy that's going to be coming very, very shortly to our webpage. And I want to thank you again. Happy plantings.